Hello everyone, I'm Alex Russo and I'm a science fiction and fantasy author. This is the first installment in a series on how to create sci-fi spacecraft. So, this presentation only covers spacecraft in brief. I will be going into the types of spacecraft and saving specific ship systems for future videos. This presentation will focus on the types of spacecraft, some potential power sources for your craft, propulsion systems, and some considerations for inhabited spacecraft. There are many types of spacecraft, both manned and unmanned. Starting off with manned spacecraft, we have a capital ship, which is a large starship often intended for military purposes. Some sub-classifications of a capital ship could be a command ship for a high-ranking officer, a colony support ship to attend to the needs of a colony, or a warship intended for interstellar battles or planetary occupations. A starliner is a large starship intended for commercial travel between the stars, similar to an ocean liner or cruise ship. A reconnaissance vessel is a type of spacecraft with a primary mission of scouting out regions of space and obtaining intelligence in unknown or enemy star space. A freighter is a starship that holds cargo. A pleasure yacht is a small to medium-sized spacecraft with few occupants and is usually owned by the ruling class and wealthiest of a planet or region of space. A lifeboat is a smaller spacecraft intended to evacuate a larger spacecraft of its occupants if boarded or damaged beyond repair in a region of space far from help. A shuttlecraft is a small spacecraft that is able to enter into the atmospheres of different worlds and return to space on its own. A starfighter is a spacecraft that is essentially the equivalent of a fighter jet in space. For unmanned craft, there are drones, which are remotely piloted spacecraft. Another is a probe, which is an information-gathering device. Satellites are tiny spacecraft usually in charge of telecommunications networks or military operations. Finally, there are autonomous spacecraft, which are starships without a crew that operate on their own. Unlike manned spacecraft, I have left sizes out on many of the unmanned spacecraft because they can truly be any size you want them to be. Although a space station could be considered a spacecraft, I have left it out of this listing because a space station is incredibly more complex than any starship. Just like there are numerous sources of power on Earth, there are numerous ways you could power your spacecraft. Solar power comes to mind for me since the ISS and several satellites have solar panels. However, whether you want this on a starship or space station that is far from any star is up to you. One method could be using the solar wind to spin rotors on the starship, which spin dynamos similar to windmills. Fossil fuels and burning wood are another source of power, though I haven't seen much of this in sci-fi, so it could provide a unique twist to your story. Another could be lasers beamed from a homeworld or space station that power photoelectric cells. Hydrogen and microbial fuel cells are another option, but I would recommend these for small spacecraft or auxiliary systems. If you have rotating parts on your ship, you could have dynamos attached to the rotating assemblies that provide power, though I imagine it may seem strange to consume electricity in order to provide power to the rest of the ship. Then we have nuclear power. Fission and fusion are both quality ways to provide enough energy to your spacecraft without taking up much space, though be sure to leave enough space for sufficient shielding so the passengers aren't irradiated. Also, if your craft is fusion-powered, you can have the hydrogen, helium, and lithium reserves for fusion stored in containers or collected from space through a collection device. Finally, we have antimatter-matter annihilation to provide energy for your spacecraft. Like the fuel for fusion, antimatter can be collected from space or stored aboard the vessel, and be sure to remember shielding from the gamma-ray bursts caused by the annihilations, and enough backup systems to make sure the antimatter is contained. Oh, and remember to have enough room for solid-state batteries so you have power reserves in case the ship loses power for some reason. Like a power source, we have numerous options for subluminal propulsion. First off, we have the tried and true chemical rockets, but these are probably a relic of early spaceflight unless you're writing a story heavy in retrofuturistic elements. We also have fossil fuels, which can propel the spacecraft through venting the exhaust from combustion out into space. Then there's ion propulsion. However, the issue with these three options is that they are slow, so they may not be the best for an interstellar setting. However, propulsion provided by matter-antimatter annihilations could move a spacecraft faster than the previous three options. Nuclear engines are another option, and can work with either a fusion or fission system. In this circumstance, the reactor would either directly heat the propellant or power heaters that cause the condensed propellant to sublime into plasma and propel the spacecraft forward. These last three options also double as sources of power. So, when it comes to manned spacecraft, there are some considerations to keep in mind. First off, if your ship has numerous species as its crew, you need to make sure your ship has enough resources to ensure multi-species habitability and that it can sustain a suitable environment for everyone aboard. If your crew has different requirements for a breathable atmosphere, they can have their own compartments that suit their needs. What comes to mind is the Ungoi from the Halo franchise, who had their own compartments aboard Covenant capital ships because they breathed methane instead of oxygen and had to bring tanks of the precious gas with them when they entered an atmosphere low in methane. When it comes to waste management and recycling, your ship needs to have enough resources to enable long-term voyages. For example, storage for fresh and wastewater or advanced reclamation systems are needed to ensure everyone has enough water for consumption. It also needs an effective way to process recyclable materials. If your ship is powered by matter-antimatter reactions, you could have non-recyclable waste such as refuse or radioactive waste from a nuclear reactor from the homeworld or auxiliary power supply as a way to dispose of unwanted materials. Then for the environment, a stable environment needs to be ensured for everyone aboard. Temperature can be regulated through external radiators that dump the heat into space. Air also needs to be purified and recycled through a process like photosynthesis. And that is all for today. Thank you for watching and good luck on your project.